Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll just give it another minute to allow any last-minute joiners before we get started on this webinar today. Okay, so we'll get started now. So yeah, just a real quick overview on who Cloud Direct are for those that are new to Cloud Direct. So we are a Microsoft partner, and I'll come on to some of our accreditations in a second. We're about 160 members of staff, the majority of those are technical, based across offices in Bath, London, and in Cape Town, where we have our Centre of Excellence. We've done quite a large number of cloud migrations over the years, and they range from small tactical engagements to full-blown transformation engagements across Azure and Microsoft 365. As a Microsoft partner, we have the fairly standard sort of gold partners badges that the majority of partners have. But where we stand out is we also have a number of advanced specializations, which are listed here across modern workplace, Azure, and security, in addition to having the expert MSP for Azure as well, which puts us in the top sort of tier of Microsoft partners globally as well. So just quickly onto today's agenda, who I am. So my name is Demetri Nicolaou. I'm the Modern Workplace Practice Lead here at Cloud Direct, so responsible for all things Microsoft 365. What we're going to be going over today is how M365 can help you with your hybrid working strategy, some of the considerations for preparing an environment for hybrid working, and also which of those solutions are key really for deploying and getting hybrid working up and running. As ever, there's a Q&A at the end, so feel free to use the Q&A tab to ask any questions throughout, and I will do my best to answer them at the end, and then we can go from there. So I thought I'd start with just a little bit of positioning around hybrid working and how we got here. Obviously, we've all been through the challenges of the pandemic over the last year or so. An organisation had to rapidly retool and make working from home a reality where it wasn't planned for, and it just had to happen to keep people productive. And obviously, as things have relaxed slightly now in the UK, there's the ability for people to be working in the office, working from home, or a mixture of both, hence the term hybrid. But the key thing is that organisations want to be able to have that strong workplace culture, and also make sure that their customers are getting the right engagement, stability, and normal levels of service, no matter where your employees are working. Quote from Satya Nadella from Microsoft here, about 2 years worth of transformation in 2 months around the beginning of the pandemic. I think everybody just reacted, was either buying laptops, moving to things like Teams, or setting up right access solutions, which kept us all very, very busy. And obviously, another survey, 88% of business leaders are expecting flexible working to keep them the pandemic, which I think we're all starting to see right now as well. And the reason most of them finding it likely to continue because the overall experience of hybrid working has been positive. So they've seen productivity increases. And in a lot of cases, it can be more productive to work remotely. So I know personally, working at home, I can hide away, don't get interrupted as much by people walking up to my desk, and I can get on with what I need to get on with. Work-life balance, again, is massively important these days. Just by working at home, you can save, as a Londoner, it's a minimum of an hour to get anywhere from going to a customer or going to an office. That hour each side of my day, I can spend it with my kids. I can get on with some more productive things to do with work or for my own personal life. Cost savings from an organisation point of view. you need to have all those desks now that are going to be half empty half the time? You can downsize and move to a more hot desk style environment and invest those funds into something more useful to help your business grow. And with sustainability being a big focus globally now, the impacts by having people not traveling are obvious to helping in regarding our sustainability and our impact on the world around us. So moving on to the text within 365. So I always start with identity when I talk about anything cloud related and M365. I think people may have, if you've been to any of my presentations, you've seen me use these slides before, but these are quite possibly my favorite slides to talk about, with the whole move array from on-prem security, everything behind the walled garden of your firewall to protect that and control access to that. There's no longer really sufficient. With the explosion of cloud services, not just Microsoft 365, but some of the other well-known services here, Salesforce, Dropbox, Box, etc. ServiceNow, there's plenty of solutions that are now outside the control of your corporate firewall, and that the only way that you have to control access to those is via the user identity. Now, obviously, with Azure Active Directory, which is part of M365, you can do single sign-on with all these applications into your Azure AD, so users have a single set of credentials to access everything. But then how do you protect that identity to make sure that you know that the person who is accessing using those credentials is who they say they are? And that's where the key thing that really is around conditional access and multi-factor authentication. Conditional access means you can build a set of rules to enforce different behaviors depending on different scenarios. And you can use those rules to then trigger MFA, for example, to make sure you're proving who that user is. Or you can even put in risk-based rules that will automatically block access if certain criteria are not met. The benefits of all these rules, again, if you do the single sign-on piece, these conditional access rules can be applied to all these other third-party apps that are integrated into Azure AD. So you do have that great control across the whole of the different services that you're using, and protecting both your users and yourselves from impersonation-based attacks. So you have to walk through a couple of examples. In this example here, we've got a user who's a sales rep based in London, using a mobile device. He last signed in 5 hours ago. The device is using is fully packed, it's managed, and it was last seen in London. So that's evaluated. The risk is low. He's accessing an app which is relatively low impact. It's just an expensive app, so he's allowed access. A different user, a bit more senior, so he's a bit more of a sensitive user. Again, using a mobile device based in London. The device is healthy still, but he's accessing a much more business critical app, so it's classed as a high business impact. So that will improve the risk level. Sorry, but also because of the level of app that you're accessing, you're going to want to enforce MFA at this point to make sure that they are who they say they are. We then go back to our first user, who normally logs in London via a mobile device. Someone's using his credentials to access via a browser. Okay, that's nothing unusual. The normal user could do that, but the configuration is anonymous. It's anonymous IP, and last seen in Asia. That's going to trigger a lot of red flags, and will flag that as a high risk. So straight away, those policies can be used to block access and force a password reset for that user to try and prevent any further potential attempts to use that person's account. The conditional access can also be fed signals via your devices as well. So being able to manage the devices from the cloud is also really, really key. Especially in a hybrid world where your devices may not be VPNing back in all the time to manage by on-premise staff solutions, using Azure AD and Intune, or Microsoft Endpoint Manager as it's now been rebranded to manage those devices, whether they're in the office, out and about, externally, etc., means you've got that single pane of glass to keep to give you that visibility across the devices that you're managing. So Intune, and I still call it Intune out of bad habit, but Endpoint Manager, it does support both iOS and Android mobile device operating systems across both phones and tablets. It obviously supports Windows 10 and 11, and there is also some limited Mac support in there as well. So from a Windows side, you can build in compliance policies to make sure that you've got your devices at a certain minimum level from a patch antivirus point of view. You can, again, do certain things with iOS and Android devices around protecting against rooting or jailbreaking, making sure they're running a more current version of the operating system. So you can really control what type of device can access your environment. And those compliance rules can obviously then be linked into conditional access to say if the device is not compliant, block access until it's remediated, for example, as well. But then also it's about how you manage people using devices that are not corporate owned. So with the move to remote working, hybrid working, a lot of users have been using personal devices, whether that's phones, tablets, personal laptops, etc., to access data in your corporate environment, just because the needs of the current situation we've all been in. But how do you still retain control on that? On the mobile phone side, whether it's iOS or Android, you can put app protection policies, so mobile application management. So you don't own the whole device. You haven't got to enroll the whole device, which is a personal device. But you can then apply protection policies to these applications. So best example I can give is my own situation. I don't have a work phone. I use my own personal phone to access work email and then anything in our 365 environment. But I've got my Cloud Direct login and I've got a personal login in those same apps. I can't copy and paste data from my Cloud Direct logins and sources of data into my personal account within the same app. There's a protective bubble that stops me from doing that. I can share between the apps, between my Cloud Direct logins, but not with my other logins. And I can't even save it to or copy and paste to the note app on my phone, for example. So you're always in control of what's going on, whether it's a corporate owned device or a personal mobile device at this point as well. Those policies can also enforce PIN requirements, and again, the whole jailbreak, root detection, etc., on the operating system of the phone as well. So when I enrolled my phone to access the work data sources, I had a 4-digit PIN on my phone because I'm a little bit lazy with that. But as soon as I put the actual, I wanted to access my email, it insisted I had to have a 6-digit PIN. So I had to update my PIN, and then I'm able to then access the data from my personal device as well. So yeah, so just to walk through that example, the user adds the business email account to their email app, typically the Outlook app. You're prompted to effectively provide your credentials. On an Android device, you will need to download the company portal app, just because of the way that Android works. It's not enrolling the whole device, just helping to set up work profiles. On an iOS device, you haven't got to worry about that. If you then don't meet minimum requirements, like PIN required, encryption, or if you've got a jailbroken device, you may get blocked. But you update the PIN, you'll then check the compliance. Once you meet the minimum level, you're then allowed to add your email account, and off you go. At that point, then you're also then triggered via conditional access for any MFA-based policies as well. So, talked about the mobile devices. I'm also going to talk about people using personal devices at home that are unmanaged. Could be a mixture of operating systems, older devices, not to any sort of level of compliance. Now, there are some controls that you can apply to that, either again using the company portal app onto Windows 10, but you don't. Some users may not want you to enroll their personal devices completely. So how do you stop your data leaving your environment but still ensure your users are productive? You probably have heard of Windows 365, which was announced the last few months. And it's a sort of a direct response from Microsoft to some of these hybrid working challenges. So why do they launch it? Well, it's to address the hybrid working piece. Everyone is working from a lot of different locations on a variety of devices, and in some organizations, letting that data be stored locally on personal non-managed devices in any shape or form is too much of a risk, even when some of the protections are available via sort of Microsoft 365. So by having a Windows 365 PC per user, effectively a cloud PC, you are able to sort of use a whole bring your own PC sort of model, where a user's using their PC, but they're not actually accessing your data. They're just connecting into a managed instance of Windows 10, or soon to be Windows 11, and your data never leaves the control of your tenant, if that makes sense. The other benefit of that is you haven't got to sit there scrambling for laptops in the event that people need to start working from home again, or find more higher powered devices. So if you've got an end user that works in the office predominantly on a high powered PC for CAD, for example, and they have to work at home if there is another lockdown, which, depending on what you believe in the press, that talks about happening, these high powered machines aren't going to be available at home potentially. So how does that user stay productive? By having a Windows 365 instance with the right level of specification in the cloud, they can connect that machine as if they're in the office and carry on working in the same way with the same level of resource and the same applications. As I mentioned as well, security and compliance side of this is massive, because your data is not leaving the control. The connection to Windows 365 is effectively a remote desktop connection. All you're sending back to your end user's personal devices is the screen input, output from the screen, and then the input from the mouse and the keyboard. So massively secure, and it means that the users can work from any device, whether that's a tablet, a Windows machine, a Mac, and get that same Windows experience that they would have in the office, and literally can disconnect from the session in one location on one device, connect back in again, you'll pick up exactly where you left off. The Windows 365 side also massively creates some new opportunities and brings some different challenges as well. Obviously, if you having to bring on new members of staff that are remote based, working from home, you haven't got to worry about clearing out laptops and devices for them that are pre-set up or need to be enrolled, and then get them up and running. Windows 365, once it's configured in the back end, is literally assign a license to a user to make sure they're in the right group, and that will self-provision based on your configuration profiles, and will be available for the user to access. The security configuration is all managed via Intune, like any other Windows 10 device, so you can apply the same consistent policy to push out applications to it and manage it as you would do a traditional Windows 10 device. And just means that from a business continuity point of view, if you ever needed to spin up something quickly, and again, I think the best example is the high-powered machines for people that are office-based with high-end computing requirements, being able to spin up a cloud machine relatively quickly and get them working from home in a disaster situation. If, I don't know, you're not able to come to the office because of a fire, or because there's another lockdown or something like that, massively improves the flexibility for getting your users productive as quickly as possible, and making sure they have the right tools to continue to do their job. And I've sort of just covered that slide already by just covering all those points, so I'll skip on. So I've talked about around sort of some of the core components around identity and devices to enable your users to work, but then there's also how do you keep your users productive and collaborating and working, whether they're in the office, working at home, or working in a mixture of these locations with different people. And obviously that's where Microsoft Teams comes in. So Teams obviously has had massive growth in adoption across the pandemic. A lot of people were using it from a collaboration point of view, for IM, for document sharing in workspaces, etc. as well. Teams is also not just a collaboration tool, it's also a communications tool, and it can be used to replace the telephony platform. So by having a single collaboration and communications platform, which will work no matter where that user is, whether it's on a mobile phone app, a web browser, or a Teams app on your Windows or your Mac device, you're able to communicate in exactly the same way, whether you're in the office or at home. Your DDI will follow you around, for example. So yeah, so just a few details here. So obviously you're able to do one-to-one communications over IM, Teams to Teams calls, to escalate those into group conversations. As I mentioned, your work number, your DDI, is assigned to you as a user. So wherever you sign in with Teams, your phone will ring. So as I like to jokingly call it, you can't escape your DDI at this point. Obviously, you can control your presence about when you can and can't take things. You can set quiet hours, etc., and manage that interaction on your mobile devices as well. As a telephony platform, it is a fully fledged PBX system. You've got you've got the ability to do transfers, hold music, call parking. You've got voicemail transcription. You've also got this have IVRs via auto attendance with the press 1 for this, press 2 for that options, and nest hunt groups, or in team world known as call queues behind that, so you can route your calls to groups of people, and there's different routing protocols as well for that as well. And then obviously the endpoints that you're connecting to is typically going to be not a desk phone in a hybrid world. It's going to need to have certified headsets. You may want to look at some sort of speakerphone situations, and if your meeting rooms, you might want to look at some of the Teams meeting room endpoints, and also go potentially look at Surface hubs for the full collaboration experience as well, depending on your use cases. Teams obviously gives you the ability to work seamlessly as a team from anywhere. So across the pandemic, my modern work team, I've literally not met anyone face to face, and we collaborate using Teams all the time, whether that's for calls, whether that's in a team channel, we're sharing documents and working on things together. We're always interacting with the same things, whether we would be in the office or whether we be at home or out on a customer site. A team is made up of different channels. They can be public or private, so you can have a general access area in the team and have a more private channel for something a bit more sensitive, like say financial information that only certain people need to see. You can invite guests in based on your policies from externally, so you can collaborate with your customers or your partners. You've got tools within team, the ability within Teams to integrate other tools like Planner, To Do, etc., to help manage what you're doing. And there's not just a Microsoft app that you can integrate. There's a whole third-party sort of a whole store that enables you to integrate a load of third-party applications that will have native Teams integrations as well. Teams obviously also enables you to co-author using Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Data storage in Teams is powered by SharePoint, so you've obviously got the same features that you get within SharePoint or OneDrive for co-authoring, whether you're working on the document natively within Teams using the web browser versions or using the full desktop suite. You've also got the version history that you've probably seen within SharePoint and OneDrive, so you can roll back, bring things back, make changes and see what people have changed. And you can also search across the whole of your Teams estate, whether that's people, files, or chats, to try and find what you need. Mentioned the whole chat and group chats already. One of the key things around Teams is persistent across the device. No matter which device you log on, or whether it's a web browser, you will see the same view. So if you're having a group chat on your mobile phone as you walk down the road to get the kids from school, and you come back to your main machine and you log onto your Teams client, that chat will be exactly where you left it on your mobile phone. You can just carry on where you left off. You've also got the usual bits to try and personalize messages with GIFs, stickers, emojis. Depending on policies, these can be disabled. And again, depending on your policies, you can federate with external organizations, so you can work with your partners, your customers directly over Teams, one-to-one, in groups, etc. as well. As I mentioned, there's a number of integrations within Teams into the wider M365 ecosystem, and also some third-party apps. I'm going to just briefly touch on something I think will help with hybrid working, which is sort of some of the business processes with low-code solutions for things like Power Automate and Power Apps. If you're going to have working with colleagues in various different locations, paper-based processes are probably not going to be the most efficient things in the world to use anymore. So being able to use things like forms, automation behind those forms to trigger workflows, or building custom Power Apps to enable business processes to work easier, will greatly improve the end user experience when working remotely. You can literally create Power Apps from within Teams if you so wish. There's a very quick animated demo here of someone creating some a basic app, and there's also ability to connect with different data sources and applications. You can go as far as creating individual bots. So I've seen one where someone's created an HR bot very similar to this one, and it will bring back the relevant policy documents, so you haven't got to go and try and find them across SharePoint or a file server. It just brings you back the latest version of the company policy that you need. And then moving on to what we've created at Cloud Direct, which is our own hybrid working maturity model. Purpose of this model is to try and help you understand where you are on the spectrum of hybrid working. Obviously, as we've discussed, the pandemic's obviously forced many businesses to rapidly deploy solutions to facilitate remote working, and in some cases, a lot of people weren't strategic about it. It was just get it out, get it working, let's get on with it. But now, as we're going back to a little bit more normality and a mixture of hybrid working, we need to make sure that those environments are set up in the best way to maximise the productivity and the security, to make sure that we're doing the best around the organisation's security requirements, compliance requirements, but also from an end user experience. What we try to do is break down the maturity, the model into three levels, into three distinct tiers. That is, so as we move from one to the other, each level is obviously increasing maturity. For example, a reactive adopter, you've just deployed Teams. You haven't really thought about integrating it as your central telephony platform. You've got some basic security, but then if you look into the strategic adopter, you've done a bit more around your end user training, a bit more change management. You sorted out your meeting rooms to have the right endpoints. You started to integrate your telephony platform, so you've got that single communication and collaboration experience no matter where you are, as an example. And you've updated your policies and your configurations to suit that hybrid working model. If you then move into the thriving adopter, so you consider things like Windows 365, which may or may not be good for your organization, more control around your data, mentioned earlier on about using Power Apps, things like Power Automate to try and maximize productivity and move away from paper-based processes, and also looking at things like the zero trust security models as well. Now, a lot of what I talked about at the beginning with identity and devices fits into zero trust. They're sort of two of the core pillars of the 6 within zero trust. Getting those right will greatly improve your overall security posture, which is obviously really, really key in this day and age as well. So, opening up to any Q&A if we've got any. I'm just going to take a look at the Q&A tab, which looks relatively clear at the moment. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to enter them now. There is a recording for this and the slides will be made available, which is obviously a pretty standard question we normally get. But there is no questions. Keep an eye on this. I'll just move to the last slide then. So obviously, a hybrid model isn't, there's not a hybrid model that's a one size fits all for an organization. It's about understanding your requirements, where you are and what you need. So if you would like to work with us on that, we'd like to book in a one-to-one session with you, one of our experts. If you have an account manager, feel free to reach out to them directly to arrange one. And if not, obviously there's our contact details there. We can put you in contact with the right people to get those conversations started. Okay, it looks like the Q&A hasn't got any questions, which is good. Hopefully everything made sense. So I'd like to thank everybody for their time this morning, and hopefully speak to people soon.